Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumu and I'm always excited to be on this show. We discuss all things books, from history to geography to politics to business to entrepreneurship, romance, action, drama, whatever genre it is. This is where we discuss them all. Today we are going into another autobiography, this time from a man who is an iconic figure in media and publishing. Well, I'm not going to tell you about him. I'll allow this introduction to let you know who I'm talking about. But his book is fascinating. It's titled The Road Never Forgets. Let's get to meet with him and then enjoy the conversation.
Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi is a veteran journalist, scholar, public relations and advertising professional, publisher and author. He's an alumnus of the University of Ibadan and New York University. Between 1977 and 1983, Ogunbiyi lectured alongside Wole Soyinka and others in the Drama and Literature Department of the University of Ife, which was later renamed Obafemi Awolowo University by the military regime of General Ibrahim Babangida. He ventured into journalism by becoming one of the founding members of the Guardian newspapers and later served as the managing director of Daily Times of Nigeria. He is the founding chairman of Tainus Communications and Tainus Books. Ogunbiyi joins Channel's Book Club to discuss his book, The Road Never Forgets.
Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi, nice to have you on Channel's Book Club.
Thank you, Kunle. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. This is my favorite TV station, so I'm glad to be here.
Great, great. And thank you for writing this. I like to say I'm a student of history. And one of the things that I've observed in our country is our failure in documenting our stories, telling our stories, documenting history. And your book is packed full of historical incidences. It's not just about your story as an individual, but it's also in many ways the story of Nigeria in so many aspects. Well, did you set out to achieve that?
No, thanks, Kunle, for asking that question. When you write your memoir, obviously you're telling your own story. But in my own case, because of the circumstances of my birth, I haven't been born in Kano and then go to school in the west of Nigeria. And I grew up in Ibadan. I went to school behind Chipaolo's house. And so I was a witness to events as they unfolded. And so in writing this book, obviously, events happened. Go back to Kano, for instance, in 1953, Kano riots. I saw that. Living in Samongere, we saw this thing happen. So in telling my story, I found myself inevitably going back to those details and retelling them. And I'm glad that it's covered that way. I don't think I set out to do that initially. I think it just happened. It flowed as I did that. And I was happy that Chief Emeka Anyoko pointed that out in his, I think the Vice President also said so during the book launching, that it's also a history of that. I'm glad that that's the case, but I did not set out to write. Yes, in writing the accounts of things that I had to write about, I have to be sure that the facts were correct. I had to check. I did some homework. I did some research to just say to myself, to remind myself again that what year was it again? The 1965 elections in the West. What time was? So I had to go back. But I told the story as they occurred to me and as I remember, as I recall them.
Interesting. Many times I ask authors, what's in your book? I think the right question for you is, what's not in your book? Because you were born in Kano, yes. Your father, Yoruba, your mother, Igbo, you lived earliest years in Kano, yes. Came to the West, schooled, you speak Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba. Yes. And your career through the academia, through the media, etc. And in each instance, one of the things I like about your book is in each instance, it looked as if you approached the story with a set the record straight or tell the story approach. So I learned a lot, like the Kano riots you just mentioned now.
Yes.
Was that
53 Kano riots?
Yes.
I was 6.
I didn't. It's a famous story in quotes, but I didn't really know about that story until I read your book.
Okay, all right.
Emanating from Enahoro, voting, and so on and so forth. So let's talk. We'll come down to specifics, but let's talk generally now. I know writing an autobiography is tough, and you did mention to me you wrote this during the pandemic.
I started the process during the pandemic, and we were all locked up, of course, at home. And my daughter, Oreoluwa, had been asking me to work on this, and her other siblings have been saying to write it. But here was I during the pandemic. We're locked up in the house, and I said to myself, well, this is the best time to start writing this. And so I settled down to it, and then started writing exactly during that pandemic. It took 2 years to write. This took me 2 full years to write. And I got worried at the end that we had a deadline to coincide with my birthday in April. And so I was rushing to get this thing through quickly. And after 2 years of work, I said, my goodness, this is a fat volume. I didn't realize it would be this big. I thought it would be much smaller. But my publisher kept on saying to me, add more things to it, tell this story. And I said, look, too many stories already. But I'm glad that it turned out this way. I could have said more here. And my friend who wrote the foreword to this book, BJ, believes that there will be a sequel to this book, and I've said to him, I don't know if there is a sequel, but at least I'm happy that this is out.
But what did you set out? It might seem like a question with an obvious answer, but I'm curious to hear from you. What did you set out to do? Different people write autobiographies for different reasons. What was your own reason?
Okay.
And why did you feel it was time?
Good question, Kunle. Look, you said it already. Here was I, the product of an exogamous marriage. Mother was Igbo, father was Yoruba, and I was born. And I knew from when I was a child that that's an unusual story, and that something about that story needed to be told. Then as I got older, then the nature of my career. So here was I, academia. Then I went to work because I'm restless. That's the other thing about this that you will find. I'm a very restless person. So once I got to The Guardian, and I started doing the Guardian Literary Series, interviews with all leaders, thanks to Mr. Alex Ibu, who gave all that support. I said to myself, now this is an unusual kind of story. Then I became a grandfather, and my granddaughter, Feromi, kept saying to me, Grandpa, what does it mean to be Balogun of Ipara? And then one day she said to me, what does it mean to be Aremo? Is Aremo different from Balogun? And then she put me through these questions. Why did my great-grandfather go to live in Kano? And I said, this is interesting. So I said to myself, one day I said to my wife, I think somebody has to write this story for this. So I needed to tell this story. But I was also driven by, something happened a few years ago about the Guardian newspapers, about the Guardian. Nobody had told the story of what happened at the Guardian, what Alex Ibu tried to do there, what we tried to do there. And I said, in writing my story, therefore, I will devote a major section of that to my career in the media. So there's a chapter on the Guardian, another chapter on the Daily Times. There are no histories of the media in our country. I don't know of any. Apart from Omu's book, which is the history of the Nigerian press. I don't see that many. Chief Oshoba wrote a brilliant book on his own experience in the media, and I needed to tell certain, with some depth, what we did at the Guardian. Because I was part of that story. And not so much so that others who want to set up papers can see it, but just so that the record is there. Here is what Mr. Alex Ibu tried to do. He got people like Dele Cole, Dr. Makebo to work with him, and people like Stanley Makebo recruited us to her. So that's the story. Anybody coming 20, 30 years from now, 40, 50 years from now, would go back and see what we did then. Baba Joseph wrote a lovely book, Walking a Tightrope, which is his own biography. It talks about what he did at Daily Times, but that period post-Jose hasn't been told at all in writing, and I thought I needed to do that. Right. So here was I, so that unusual background, and then, restless character who was MD of Daily Times, and so I thought I should tell the story.
Well done, well done. Recently I've been gathering content
Yes.
for my own memoir in the future.
You should. You should.
I wish my grandfather had written something.
Good point, Kuna. I'm sorry to cut. I was also very lucky. As a young teacher at Ife, my father came to spend a long weekend with us. And so I brought up my tape recorder. I said, Papa, tell me about your life. And for 2 days, in fact, there are quotes in the book from him. There were stories he told me. I sat down with him for 2 days, and I played the tape back the other day, and I heard his voice, and I was laughing because some of the stories I told here were stories he told me. I sat down with him and said, tell me what happened. Where were you born? What happened? Then you went on stowaway to Sierra Leone. How did that happen? And that story, that's interesting that I did that, because it helped me go back to check some things. And it's when BJ was writing a foreword to this book, my friend, he said, you know, Yemi, your children are going to love this book. I tell you why. Here was I became a member of Daily Times, and Kabiyesi Onipara wanted to make me Balogun. And I said, no, who wants to be Balogun? I thought, what's that mean? I don't want to go there. Then he sat me down and said, let me tell you the story of your grandfather. And I said to him, my grandfather? I said, yes. Then he went back in time. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, and said, so I'm not asking you to be Balogun. We didn't just pick on you randomly. You come from a family of persons who have been a part of this community. So we're asking you to, tread where others have trodden. And I was humbled. So this is important because then I've stretched that story 2 generations, beyond my great-grandfather. Hopefully my own grandchildren will read this, and then that story will continue. That genealogy will not go away. It will be there.
Yeah.
It's important.
Very important.
It's important.
So many anecdotes, so many stories, so many. I like gists. I like gists. And there are so many.
Yes.
Which one do I even pick on? Because this book is a hefty book.
Yes, it is.
But it's one that I'm recommending people to just buy and read. It reminds me in many ways of Bishop Coker's own memoir of the Puta panel.
Oh, which I've not. Oh, I have that.
Witness
I'm not ready.
to Justice.
I have that,
It's this big.
Yes, I have that.
But it's so. It's one of those books this big, and I just had to finish it.
Thank you so much.
Let me pick on a few.
Okay.
You are not particularly. You told the story of the Guardian.
Yes.
And the story of the Guardian is a very rich story.
It is.
From the moment Mr. Makebo called you out of University of Ife, to join the Guardian.
As it then was, yes.
Yes, and the many things that happened in between. Like when you told the story of Decree 4, you are not a big fan of the current president, are you?
No. Again, Kule, you're wrong. I was merely telling the story of what happened at that time.
At that time.
And I stuck to that history. I said, look, here's what happened, Decree 4, what it meant for us. And it was a difficult time for us at the Guardian when Tunde Thompson and Dr. Arabo were sentenced. It was a tough time. And the Guardian was shut down for
Oh, yes.
We were not paid salaries. It was an interesting time. When I see young journalists today, they don't know the kind of challenges we faced at that time. Look at the story of Abacha. One morning, Abacha called me and said, Yomi, you never could say Yemi for some strange reason. He always said Yomi. I said, Yomi. He said, that was a photograph, was a story of him in the front page of the papers. Onyema Ogochukwu was editor. And we had a photograph of him, frowning. He wasn't smiling. So why do you carry my photographs and say that I have... At that time, there was a rumor that he and the president had there was a little tip between himself and President Babangida. We didn't know what the problem was. We just ran the story. And he said, why do you always portray me as if I have a problem with somebody else? Now, just for the photograph. So I said, sir. He said, no, I don't like this. You guys, do this. So I called Onyema. Of course, Onyema wasn't happy and said, sir, we didn't create this photograph. This was the photograph of the man that we have in the archives. Anyway, I said, Onyema, do me a favor. Look for a photograph where Abacha is smiling and slam it on the front page of the paper tomorrow with a story. So next day we ran the story about the army building some bridge somewhere, and we had his photograph there. Then my phone rang about midday. He always came to the office, not before 1 p.m. Abacha didn't wake up until about anyway. So he called me, Yomi. I said, yes, sir. He said, yes, you're doing a good job. So he banged the phone, and then I was
Anybody who is trying to pick a memoir or an autobiography to read, I always say, look for that of a journalist. Don't go and find the autobiography.
All kinds of stories.
And there's a story of the Simply Mr.
Oh, yeah.
At the Guardian, where you decided to call everybody Mr. regardless of title.
That was it.
And you hit a block with the late Chief F.R.
It was an interesting story. The policy was there, was in place. Of course, people were called Mr. This, Mr. That. We didn't call it. We had a few exceptions. When we started the policy, we published a list of exceptions to the rule. So we had this case, we went to see Chief Rotimi Williams. And we got there. Chief Rotimi Williams always had siesta between 3 and 4. And so we got there at 4 o'clock, and he received us in his, again, very traditional. He always wore this ankara, the top. And so he came in there in this big table. And he knew Alex Ibu very well because this Rotimi's late son, Ladi, and Alex were very good friends. So we got there. And Chief Williams said, yes, Alex Ibu presented a case about Decree 4, that journalists were retained. He said, I'm not going to do this case. He said, you guys insist on calling me Mr. Williams. I'm not Mr. Williams. So he said, and he gave us
the history of
how he became, this chief of Egba, how that title and how becoming that chief entered into the House of Chiefs. Because in those days, you couldn't become a minister unless you were a member of Parliament. So that title entitled him to a seat in Parliament, which was why he became Attorney General of the old Western region. So if you have made exceptions to the rule, I should be one of the exceptions. If you don't change it, I'm not going to do your case for you. I was joking. So we go back to the office, and Mr. Ebu said to me, well, Yemi, you have to explain this to your colleagues. And they were livid, they were angry. They said, we're sold out. We're not going to change this. So I said to them, Tunde and Noka will rot in prison. Let's get So we changed it. And then the press, they took us to the cleaners. They abused us for dropping the ball. We shouldn't have done this. And I believe, of course, that we should have kept that policy. It was very nice. But there are little stories there. I mean,
there are so many little stories. There's a story of the Oni. Yes, who prophesied.
Yes.
Because you wanted to leave Ife.
I was taking a sabbatical leave.
Temporarily.
And I went to see him. I had Mr. Goodbye, Kabesi. It was a Saturday, and I went to see him to say, look, we're going to leave tomorrow. I'm going to go and start my 1-year sabbatical leave in Ife, at the Guardian. Before I accepted to go, I think Mr. Ebu had come to see him anyway. So when I saw him, he said, yeah. So he pulled me across and looked at me from a distance. And Kabesi had this style about him.
Charisma.
So he said, come and stay by me. So I sat by him. We were taking this wine from this wine goblet. He said, you know something? You're not going to come back here. I said, Kabesi, I'm just going for 1 year. So sabbatical leaves, you have to come back. He said, yeah, I had you. He said, I'm not there if I had you. We've been told in the temple. He said, we've been told in the temple, you're not going to come back here. He said, so. I said, but Kabesi, listen. He said, oh, no. I said, come here. I said, no, I know. You won't come back here. He said, this place will be too small for you. Yemi, I said, Kabesi, you see, sabbatical leaves. Oh, so he said, you're wasting your time. And I went to argue with him, why we left the place? So I said to Shadi, I said, what does it mean by I'm not going to come back here? This man is, Kabesi doesn't know what he's saying, John. This man, maybe some kind of...
There's so many things I want to talk
I know you want
to. But we don't have time.
We don't.
Maybe outside of here.
We should come.
Yeah? No, there's so many things.
You are not at the book launch.
You know, there's a part of your book.
Yes.
Where you argued that journalism is not just the era is past where journalism was just for the technical technicians in the field.
Yes.
That it's now more, not even now, because you went into history to mention names of the legends in journalism who were not technicians, so to speak. You mentioned Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who founded Tribune in 1949, Zik, West African Pilot, and a host of other people.
Many of them,
Yeah. Well, that had to do with the fact that when you went into journalism, you were not a technician yourself.
I came from the university as a university teacher, and it wasn't said in many words, but those of us who came from the university were seen as intruders of some sort in the profession which was the exclusive preserve of persons who had gone to journalism school. We had come from nowhere. I was a teacher. I was teaching literature and English and all that. And so I needed to, but then we fought that. We didn't fight it. We resisted it. We gave it a shot. And the best way to do it was say, we're going to learn on this job. And we learned quickly. And we needed to prove that you don't have to go to NUJ school to be a journalist. And at any rate, journalism is so wide. It wasn't just about being able to lay a page or being able to design. No, it's not about page design alone. It's also about some of the things we tried to do. Where there were interviews with some of the finest journalists in the world. All they did was interview people. It's a very collaborative profession, and it's a teamwork. If you produce all the papers you produce, and your gate men don't let out the truck to deliver the papers, you're not going to sell your paper, you're not going to make money. So even that gate man, even that truck driver plays a key role in how successful your paper is.
And of course, I mean, so many other aspects, posts, Daily Times,
I know.
Tanos, publishing.
I know.
But we don't have time, so we really have to wrap up. But let me ask you a question, I mean, to wrap things up.
Yes.
It's more of a philosophical question.
Yeah.
When you look back over the last 70 years, I was trying to find the answer in your book. I found many answers, but I was wondering if there was the answer to this question. When you look at the past 70 years and you look at life, not just yours, but life generally, the lives of other people, your friends, colleagues, and all that, what runs through your mind in terms of how the decisions of our lives shape us and how we reach those decisions? I don't know if I've hit the nail on the head.
Are you speaking from the point of view of individuals or something national?
Individuals and collective. You actually had collective in mind, but I think about this a lot, especially when I'm reading the stories of people. I'm looking at the decisions they made at various points in their lives and how those all came together at the point of their writing.
The decisions that you make about life are not sometimes decisions which you control. And that happened, you can see that it's in this book a lot. They are sometimes beyond you. I mean, the decision to go to school in Ibadan, decision to go back to school in Lagos, decision to study English and not study law. Those are not decisions you make saying, all right, I want to become a big lawyer and become a judge tomorrow. No, you don't make that kind of decision. All you're saying is, look, what am I going to do here? I want to become a lawyer because A and B said it's a good thing, or because my father said so. In my own case, nobody told me to either study English or not study English. But I fell in love with literature as I was growing up, and I said, maybe I want to be a writer. Maybe I want to do. So those decisions sometimes are beyond you. Sometimes they're not that. I don't think that. Even, I mean, look at how I end up as editor of Daily Times. I didn't plan that.
Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi, or Chief.
Well,
Chief
fine, Chief, yes.
The Balogun of
Ekpara. And Aremo Akaribu. That's very important. Aremo Akaribu. He was calling him fool.
Thank you very much for joining us on Channels Book Club.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure, Kule. I love this. I will come back anytime. I will come back.
So many things you will find in Dr. Yemi Ogunbiyi's book. It's thick, it's large, but every single page in there is It's fascinating. Now, we'll be very delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumu. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.